Hi, and welcome to the Handbag Designer 101 podcast with your host, Emily Blumenthal, handbag designer expert and handbag fairy godmother, where we cover everything about handbags from making, marketing, designing, and talking to handbag designers and industry experts about what it takes to make a successful handbag. Welcome, Ryan McInturf, attaché to the Quebec government. Welcome to the Handbag Designer 101 podcast. Welcome to you, Canada, and Brooklyn, right?
Yeah, Brooklyn. Yes. Thank you, Emily, for having me. I'm really pleased to be here with you today.
Pleased is a good way to start. I find that very launching in a conversation.
Yeah. Start with a positive vibe. You always have to start that way.
Yes. And I was fascinated to learn that it was your well-earned degree in French that got you a job working for the French part of Canada. So that's exciting.
Yeah, which a lot of people don't realize when, you go to Quebec, it's very important. Sometimes I think if you don't speak French first there, you might offend them. But there's parts of Quebec City that are 100% French. It's very...
Is the Quebec French the same as regular French? And pardon my ignorance, because I'm sure there's nuances. Because if you speak about Spanish broken down per country, they say that the most textbook country that has the Spanish that you would learn in school would be Colombia. But you veer anywhere beyond that, you'll look at, the word for bus in one country is one thing, or the Dominican or Puerto Rican Spanish, it's guagua, or as opposed to autobus. So did you have to learn the street slang of French?
The Quebec French is different from French. It's comprehensible, but the Quebec French is more pure, they would say, from than the French of France, because the Quebec French, they've kept it because it's been, the community is more isolated.
Right.
So they've kept it ever since all those individuals from whichever king sent them over to Quebec City and Montreal. So it's very a pure French, and they don't adopt English words. Whereas in French, they'll say email, whereas Quebec French, you'll say courriel. So
they're not messing
around. So they will not adopt a new English word. They'll create a new word or find another word for it.
So that is a very interesting segue to move into, we were connected. I don't even remember how, probably through LinkedIn, but because I'm a LinkedIn junkie, you can always find me there.
My best friend.
Oh, I love a LinkedIn. I always tell my students that's where the old people hang out. And don't discount anything there on social, because that's where all your connections and business deals will most likely take place. You're in a very unique position, because what the essence of this podcast is about is handbags, doing business as handbags, industry, learning about production, manufacturing, marketing, the whole thing. I would love to talk about some benefits about what it takes and why going through a Canadian channel could be beneficial to not only a small business, but to a handbag designer, whether you're established or up and coming.
Yeah. Well, I would say, first of all, you can't discount the commercial aspect that, Canada will have for you. Let's say you're an emerging designer and you want to put your voice on the map. It's hard for you to get in front of Saks. It's hard for you to get in front of Bloomingdale's. Essence is a brand, is a retailer.
And that's SSENSE, not Essence, because whenever you hear that, I'm sure a lot of people still pronounce it.
They don't.
Double S. Correct.
They're someone who I would say they're considered a concepts or a kit, and other buyers look who they're going to carry to maybe actually take that risk. Because I think no one's really filling that gap of Barney's. So you have Essence that's kind of filling that gap of Barney's, and they'll take a risk on you, and they have the capacity to buy volume. So that's a win-win for a designer. So they can buy volume and they can put you on the map, help you grow. I would say that's one, in the commercial aspect, it's just there are a lot of buyers there, not just Essence, but there's Harry Rosen, for instance, for men's. There's Holt Renfrew, which is probably, I would say, the equivalent of a Saks Fifth Avenue. And then if you're looking more commercial for a Macy's, you have Hudson Bay. And Hudson Bay owns Saks. So thinking, Saks is owned actually by a Canadian entity.
So would you say in your professional Canadian expertise that a brand who may struggle with getting retail channels, or even from a D2C perspective, that almost, and regardless of where you are, try and get a foothold within North America, i.e. the United States, that almost going through Canada is like almost like a backdoor into the United States.
I would say there's less competition, so it's easier. It's a smaller pond, so it's easier to get recognized in a smaller pond than it is to be recognized in New York. I'd say you're less likely to meet someone who might, I don't want to say con you, but I would say, within Canada, we spoke about this prior, there's a lot of distributors in Canada that take care of all of North America. And they're distributors which don't really exist. I mean, there's still some distributors in New York, but I would say they're few, far between.
It's a dinosaur.
Which is sad because, they have skin in the game. If you work with a distributor, they're actually going to...
Or even a showroom.
Yeah. Where showrooms are like, they have their anchor brand from my experience, and then they'll sign on everyone. So it's really hard to gauge if they're sincere or not. Because it's like, are they actually sincere about actually growing the business, or are they just having someone else on here will pay for, the $500 to $2,000 a month retainer, and then if it falls to the water, they'll be like, oh, we tried, or the buyer saw it. Whereas distributor, like, they actually are going to try to push it and pay more doors. So I would say going to Canada, you could find a distributor that does all of North America, and then that can actually get, you could get A, they distribute your goods, and B, you could get in some good doors. Granted, you have to be careful about what distributor you're going to, because you don't want, if you're Lumi's tier company and they put you in the Bay everywhere, they put you in Macy's, then that waters down your positioning. But at the end of the day, that's due diligence that every designer has to do.
100%. That's so fascinating. So, with my experience of having been a designer and dealing with retailers ever since, from a Handbag Awards and representation of the independent designers basis, the one thing that major retailers or any real retailer wants is they want proof of concept. They want to make sure that you have traction, and they want to know retention. So they want to make sure that, do you have a social media presence? Which is wild to say that, back in the day, no one would consider their online website as real estate, but that is just as valuable, if not more, as actual in-store. So to have a test market, and I wouldn't want to minimize doing business in Canada, but to use Canada almost as a test market for retail is a real great idea. And I think a lot of people wouldn't have a clue that that's even an option.
Well, I think it's like you mentioned, like a buyer, like I tell a lot of my clients, this is like, buyer's job is to reduce the risk. Like if their job was to buy what they like, they would be an awful buyer, unless they just happen to be following what all their clients like. But if you could tell a buyer like, oh, we've been shipping boat rents over X amount of seasons, that's going to give a sense of, I don't want to say relief, but give a sense of ease for them to say, okay, well, I
100%
risk. I will remove this spot that only has like a 30% sell-through, which is not good, but for this new brand. And then hopefully that new brand will have a higher sell-through. And then that way, the buyer's doing their job and doing a great job. But they could say like, Hilton Rent was doing a good job with them. So we have a similar clientele.
How does that work though with the conversion and shipping and customs of, like, I get that a lot of cases that drop ship is really what most retailers want nowadays. Like, they don't want to risk. They don't want to house it. They don't want, like, it's all on you, honey bunny. Like, thank you so much. We'll buy your goods, but you're doing all the shipping. We don't want to commit to anything. So how does that work? Let's just say as a designer from the United States, you're like, okay, I've got a decent D2C business, direct to consumer business. I have a decent social media following. I think I want to get into retail, which is very expensive. And a lot of designers don't even realize that, you could start your retail business with a bill. I mean, that's what happened to me as soon as I started shipping to Bloomingdale's, because I didn't follow their manual and put the label on backwards. I'm not even kidding. My first piece of mail from Bloomingdale's was a bill, not a check. And they didn't make a small buy, but the, old school phone book version of what they expect of a designer to follow. It is the time value of money it takes to be prepared to ship to big department stores. It's expensive in itself. So can you speak a little bit like, okay, now I want to try going through Canada to kind of work my way back into the United States. So what does it take cost-wise and learning curve and so forth?
Well, I would say you'd have to have your prices landed. Like anyone should have your prices
LDP.
landed. Yeah, you know,
Landed Canada or landed US?
They
or
could land in US. They'll buy in US. Like, you have it land in US, and they could import. You know, they could bring it in to there. But what I will say is, I would not enter Canada trying to go on the marketplace model or the dropship model, because they would say, no, you need to have a warehouse, and I would not invest X amount of money just to be on a marketplace, because, like you mentioned, the retailer is not taking any risk. The marketplace is a new consignment, in my opinion. That's just a new consignment.
And what's marketplace, just to clarify, because that is the latest hot term that just
the marketplace would be like, let's say you are on the marketplace of the Bay. The Bay is not buying an inventory, and then it's just like
Hudson Bay.
Yeah,
you're calling the Bay like your besties. Yeah, like the Bay and I were going bowling. Hudson Bay.
Okay. Yeah, the Hudson Bay. So let's say you're on the marketplace of Hudson Bay or Maison-Simons. They would require for you to have a 3PL or a warehouse in Canada, because at the end of the day, they're not the one fulfilling it. It's basically you're going to be shipping it to the client, and then they're going to take a percentage of the sale. And they'll, I mean, it's true. A buyer will say, like, if you perform very well here, then we could see we'll get the data, and then we can make a buy. But I would say if you're not a Canadian native brand, it's a large investment just to have a warehouse for that, unless you're a huge D2C company, and that makes sense. But if not, if you're an emerging brand, I would say the best route would be to explore the Canadian market, would be to find a distributor or an agency in the Canadian market. And then they can get you into the small mom and pop stores. And then they could also then get you into, or distributor then can say, okay, we'll take care of the marketplace for you. We'll put you on because we're the distributor.
But the marketplace in that regard would still remain D2C. It would still remain drop ship and fall on the burden of the designer, correct?
Sometimes if the distributor buys a good amount up front and then they're managing it, then they would manage it with them.
So they would then have the warehouse.
Exactly. So it depends on who you're part. If it's an agency, then, you know, that's just a mute point because you're not going to do that. But if it's just a sales agency, like a showroom, they would just be a normal PO.
Right.
The goods.
In terms of these distributors, how do they work on cost? Because, okay, now, would the distributor buy these goods outright and then they would then resell it? So are they working almost as a wholesaler in itself?
Exactly. So,
okay, so
from my experience.
So they would buy these goods, probably a small amount. They would be responsible. Would the designer be responsible for shipping said inventory to the distributor, or would it?
The designer would then ship it to the distributor. Let's say the distributor is in Montreal, ship it to Montreal, and then from there, the distributor takes care of the shipments for the rest. So within Canada. Or
how does it work getting into Canada though? What is the best way you could recommend? Is it DHL with 1,000 billion, custom documents? Is it, a trucker? Like, what do you, in your experience, think is the most logistically smart way to ship goods in?
My experience, I wish I had an answer. From my experience, usually the distributor will provide that information. Like for instance, when I was in Europe and I was meeting French brands and convincing them to, because my goal, of course, is with the French brands and work with a Canadian partner for North America and not a U.S. partner for North America.
Right, that's your job.
Yeah, so if the French company is like, we're looking for an agency or distributor, I would say meet this distributor. They had a line just like yours. Then I would make the introduction. And then the distributor wants the brand, and then they come to the agreement. So the distributor would know the best way, because at the end of the day, if the distributor wants that brand, they're going to, handhold them to get that brand.
Right.
But I know that the answer is not the best answer, but the distributors, of course, are there to help because that's how they grow their business, is getting new brands.
So this is all really interesting. Like, I think, again, I know it's your job as one person to represent doing business in Quebec and Montreal and so forth. Do you deal with competition, like as a counterpart with someone in, let's say, Toronto or someone in Saskatchewan or,
No.
Obviously Saskatchewan is a hotspot.
Yeah, Saskatchewan, it's like...
I just like saying Kansas. It's fun. Yeah.
It's a beautiful one, but...
Or the Banff country.
They don't have... There's a federal government that I partner with. So a lot of times if someone wants to work with, let's say, Arc'teryx, I have a relationship with Arc'teryx because... granted, I'm paid by the state, but if a non-Quebec company wants to work with Arc'teryx, I'm not going to stop them. I'm going to make the connection for them because then it helps Can in general. But there is a federal person, but I can't really speak to their involvement. I do know that there's a French version of me, but the French version of me, they charge their clients, so they don't work with everyone. And then I think all of us have probably know that the Italians are involved, because if you go to any trade show, you'll see all these booths from Italy. But I will say every single country and every single person views the job differently. Some might view it like, oh, let's buy a bunch of real estate at Coterie. I find that to be not the best
investment.
And I think Coterie is important, but it's not the best way for me to spend my time. Because if I'm at Coterie, who am I actually meeting that could help my Canadian retailers, distributors / brands? Yeah, Coterie is great, but they're really just a client. They're just using me so they could gain more real estate space. That's what it is. Right. But if I have relationships with buying agents, international groups, or DMMs, that brings much more value to my clientele or even licensors, because I could tell Aldo, here's someone you should chat with and you should explore their IP. And maybe you can, because Aldo has the Ted Baker license and also the Brooks Brothers. That's just much more I think for the country that helps them get more exports and thereby paying more taxes than me saying, here's the igloo from Quebec, buy Quebec goods. And no buyer's going to stop, unfortunately, because buyers are Americans. Half my family doesn't know where Quebec is. So that's, that shows. So no one's going to buy something because no one in Colorado is like, oh, I really want to buy this made in Canada. They're going to buy the made in Italy more. So it makes sense if you have Italian all over the place, because that sells, and the buyer could be like, okay, I know my client loves made in Italy. But made in Quebec, unfortunately, the IP is not strong. So for me, it's better just to be on the ground and knowing how to connect the dots to create larger business.
If you ever wanted to start a handbag line and didn't know where to start, this is for you.
Living proof that independent designers can make it big.
Emily Blumenthal is one prime example.
If you had dreams of becoming a handbag designer and didn't know where to start, this is for you. If you have a handbag brand and are in need of strategy and direction, this is for you. I'm Emily Blumenthal, handbag fairy godmother and handbag designer expert, and this is Handbag Designer 101, the masterclass. Over the next 10 classes, I will break down everything you need to know how to make, market, and manufacture a handbag. Broken down for you that you'll not only skip steps in that handbag building process, but also save money in that learning curve. For the past 20 years, I've been teaching at the top fashion universities in New York City, created the Handbag Awards, and also the Handbag Designer 101 podcast. I'm going to show you like I have countless brands, from sketch to sample to shelf, whether you're just starting out and don't know where to begin, or even if you have a handbag line and just need some strategic direction, the Handbag Designer 101 Masterclass is just for you. So let's get started, and you will be the creator of the next it bag. Join me, Emily Blumenthal, with the Handbag Designer 101 Masterclass.
As an independent designer, and you just spoke about Aldo and so forth, those kinds of manufacturers, just out of curiosity, looking to partner up with a smaller talent? Are they looking, or are they purely looking from what you do? Are they looking exclusively just for more retail channels on the ground for you to represent them further? Because again, for the designers that listen and the industry that listens, what are the opportunities for them to get in bed per se with Canada, Quebec, and doing business, as overall?
I would say also, you can think about collaborations, and that depends on their voice, who they are. I use Moose Knuckles a lot of times as an example. They did a great Telfar collaboration, and Telfar, I think, is a great handbag designer, and that got Moose Knuckles A, to access another clientele, because Telfar had a different following, and B, allowed Moose Knuckles to get into doors which they were wanting to get into. So it expanded their stockist and allowed Telfar to also increase his wholesale. It's a win-win. So I'd say, Canada's home to, if you think of the large players like Canada Goose, Arc'teryx, who's the one, Aritzia. Aritzia also buys third party sometimes. So that's another big one. Rudsack. A lot of these brands look for to do collaborations. Of course, it just has to be the right match. You can't just try to post spaghetti on the wall and hope that it sticks. But
It wouldn't be spaghetti in Quebec. It'd probably be called something else, right?
Poutine or something.
There you go. You're not throwing poutine on the wall.
Yeah. So, but at the end of the day, I think you have to see, like, it's like, right, this is a Canadian entity. Let's see what we can do with them. Aldo would probably do a collaboration if it helped its side. It doesn't hurt to explore it if you think you can help that entity. So
that's also a good point about collaborations. I mean, obviously that's really where the market's at, with the in and outs and the drops, and because the beautiful thing is that it has a beginning and an ending. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't, I feel like a better investment of time than almost doing like a Kickstarter, where if it doesn't work, it's there for life. Like one failed Kickstarter is there forever. You can't undo that. So a collab with a brand, it could do great things or it could do nothing. So I think it's a better use of time and investment to be creative and out of the box, to think about what can, obviously when you're approaching any brand, it's not about what you're going to get. It's what you can bring to the table for them. Do you have a social media reach? Do you have a different customer? Do you have something that would be appealing to them, that therefore it's an ROI for them to do the manufacturing, production, and so forth? Question. I know Canada has a shopping channel also.
Yes, I do.
So I know that a lot of brands sometimes will do a shopping channel program there before they would even venture to QVC or HSN. Can you speak a little bit about that too, if you can?
I know they're shopping. I should know the name of the shopping channel because one of my clients was just on it.
It's called the shopping channel.
It's called the shopping channel. I know it's in Ontario, and I know it's a great business that you could grow a business. It's probably easier to get into there than QVC or HSN or even Shop HQ, which is back because Shop HQ filed, I think, for bankruptcy. So last year this time, they're back.
I was on Shop HQ, which used to be eMine Live, and
exactly.
that they were Shop NBC, they were Shop HQ, they were eMine Live, and then I believe they went back to Shop HQ.
Yeah, they're back in business. So I would say,
oh, well done.
Yes. I mean, they're back. I mean, they're back, and I will say my clients are giving them another try, and they're very happy. And so I would say, if you are a designer listening, I would say don't run away from Shop HQ, because my experience, you never know, and if you are factored, then even better. So then you have insurance, and if it goes awry, then that's Hilden's problem, not your.
Yes, and P.S. to that, if anybody is listening, Christina Malios Langford is one of our episodes, and it is dropped by the time this is out. It will be out December 19th. So with Christina talking about how to work with a factor. So yes. And
I think that's a very important episode because, I was talking to someone there, and it's with a major retailer that people are afraid it's going to go bankrupt. I don't think they will, because they have a lot of real estate, but they're like, one person's like, oh yeah, I'm carrying all the paper myself. And I'm like, I would hate to be in that situation. Carrying all that paper, and if something goes awry, you're the first, especially if you're not a known brand.
What does that mean, carrying all that paper, just to clarify?
Meaning that you're the ones taking all the risk, you're the one waiting for them to pay you. It's not someone else. It's like if X retailers files for bankruptcy, then
you were up shit's creek, pardon my French.
You're probably going to be the last one that's going to
get paid.
Yeah. So especially if you're not owned by ABG, or you're not, it's going to be a very tough situation.
Yeah.
That's just but talking about the Canadian shopping channel, I wish I knew more about it, but a lot of my clients, they do great business there. And I would say, like you said, you love LinkedIn. I would reach out to them on LinkedIn.
Oh, yeah.
I would reach out to all the DMMs on LinkedIn, and then chat with them. The other thing I did want to mention to you about just Canada is, if you don't want to enter the Canadian market, but you have goods to clear, Canada's a good option to clear goods, because it's not going to, if let's say your main business is Bloomingdale's, there's no Bloomingdale's in Canada. So it's less likely that, the buyer from Bloomingdale's is going to see it. So if it's in Manitoba or Saskatchewan, the likelihood of that past good being found by someone is minimal.
You had spoken about, when we did our pre-chat, you'd spoken about flyover states and something similar. So can you speak a little bit about what that meant in that regard?
I would say flyover country. So if you think of the U.S., I'm not talking about Canada here, but 𝐉𝐨𝐬𝐧, for instance. I think Gabriel's, most of their locations are in Iowa, Nebraska, parts of Ohio, which is usually known as flyover country because it's very rural, and you're not seeing a large population there. So it's a very safe way to protect the brand identity because you're hiding the goods of where they are. So Canada,
in plain sight, if you will.
exactly. And Canada has very similar parts, that, like you have Saskatchewan, then you have all that area is just like very densely populated. So it's not, and even parts of Ontario are like not very populated. So it's very easy to also have the flyover country there and to move with winners, for instance.
Right. And the beautiful thing is, to hone in on your point, is that, I mean, here we say everybody's money is green, but in Canada, it might not be. It's red, isn't it?
That's right.
It's red, like the maple leaf.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's still commerce. So to expound on what you're saying, it means that if Bloomingdale's has bought a portion of your inventory because they placed a buy and you had to buy your goods up front, then you have this buttload of stuff left and you don't have the reach on your D2C, you can always go to Canada in 2 to 3 locations at 2 to 3 department stores that won't conflict, and you can sell off your goods. Now, question, would they be sold at the same price that you would be selling to Bloomingdale's, or would you take a hit as a result of the changing currency?
It depends how, if the ATS is old, like if it's like time has passed, of course you're going to take a hit because you're going to have to reduce the price. But if it's like, let's say you have the ATS and you could deliver the immediates and you're talking to 𝐀𝐚𝐳, I don't think you would take a hit. It would just be the same pricing. So
one would assume, though, that would probably be D2C, drop ship on the side of the designer, if that's the case. Would you assume if this is new business?
If it's new business, I would try to get them in and try to get an appointment. Just talk to the buyer, and if they have that need, then you can,
then buy it upright. Right.
Buy it up. Exactly.
This is so cool. So are there any Canadian independent designers for handbags that you can speak to, or that you have any ideas, or Canadian handbag brands that we should be on the lookout?
No, I'll say like just a Canadian company. It's not like an emerging I'd say there's a footwear that do some handbags. It's called Maguire. I think they're really cool to see. Everything that they do is transparent. So in their whole entire supply chain. So that way you could see it A to Z, where it's made in Portugal, how much they pay the people in Portugal, how much they pay for the shipping, and then why they're charging you this cost.
Is it almost like a Canadian Everlane per se?
Ish, yeah. But I would say a little bit more trend focused. They have a store in New York City, so look it up, Maguire. I would say they are.
Is it MC or MA?
MAGUIRE, Maguire.
Because my high school boyfriend was a Maguire and he was MC.
Oh,
or maybe he was MA. I don't know. All I know is that he was very cute and he was very young and he still had braces, and I was a senior and he was a junior, and I don't know, by the time you're in your last year of high school, it's slim pickings. You got to start like going in the younger grades. I don't know. My stock didn't drop for that. I needed something to do to kill the rest of the year. He was very nice. Anyway, Maguire's, the store. Yeah, that's another episode.
I would say Maguire that's a great brand, and I would say that they have accessories, but they're mainly footwear, but they do have handbags as well. In terms of, I would say what I really like from Quebec, and it's also going off cue, but I think Quebec is really known for these creators that just have a great cult following. And I think it's almost advice to every emerging designer. So think about this brand called Dime. Like they are like the skateboarders, like almost like 101 gold. So like they have this glory challenge every year that they do with Vans that Vans sponsors. And it's just skaters like going, and it shows that they stay true to their DNA. And that's why people continue to like follow them and want to do collabs with them, because they see that they speak completely to the skater audience, to that youth audience that will save up and buy a lot of money for them. And it's same with this individual named 𝐺𝐺, and he has a following where I get everyone asking to chat with him. And he started as just a blogger, and he does collabs with anyone you could think of, but he has a very simplistic design. And I would say, I think Rudsack and Macaj, when they do accessories, they have nice accessories. I like Macaj's footwear not too long ago. I don't know if you saw Macaj's footwear.
I did. I actually, 10 plus years ago, I bought a coat from Bloomingdale's, a Macaj coat, and my ignorance to the brand. And it's so funny because it was more than 10 years, I think. But, a lot of people don't know its pronunciation. I said maquillage or something because it's spelled the French way. And I was immediately, schooled on that. I was like, oh, damn, I should know that because I'm a I'm clearly worldly in the world of handbags, but not for that brand. But they do beautiful work and beautiful product. And I saw their footwear and I'm not surprised. I knew their buyer years ago because I was trying to get them involved with the Handbag Awards. And they were saying at the time that that wasn't one of their core competencies. But I know that they're moving more into that because once you go into footwear, handbags come next.
Yeah, exactly. It's a natural extension. And now I think I'm always very impressed too, just with the Canadian market where, a lot of people don't know, like Psycho Bunny is owned by Thread Collective. So that's a Canadian company. And then Thread Collective has the outdoor license for Scotch and Soda and probably 10 other main known brands. Bugatti Group has the Reebok license for bags. And I think it's really cool what they're doing with that. So I think speaking to your audience where you have companies who are looking for maybe, should I look for a licensee? That's where you should look to Canada.
That's amazing. I know Bugatti was also trying to be an early adopter with Web3. I'm not sure where that's at now, but I know that the son of the founder was really trying to be core of doing drops with Web3 and new products and so forth. So something to look into if that's where, because I know it's still a dirty word. It went from being very hot. Web3?
Now it's back.
Yeah, it's had its resurgence. And I know having it with Ape, not Bathing Ape, whatever. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yes. I know what you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah,
that's a very streetwear brand. Yeah.
Yep. I'm ashamed I can't think of it. I know once we stop and we're like, duh, it's so obvious. But I know we were talking to them and so forth. But I think all this information is really, really interesting. I think, to say like they do in the street world, don't sleep on Canada.
Yeah, no, it shouldn't. Yeah.
You could sleep in Canada, but don't sleep on Canada. Ryan, if people have more questions about doing business in Canada, doing business with Canada, getting some sort of introduction within the Canadian business world, specifically Quebec, how can people reach you? And are you open to people reaching out to you?
Yeah, I'm happy to chat with anyone. That's how I work. It becomes a boule de neige, a snowball effect.
Look at you. French drop.
Yeah.
ROI on that degree. Go you.
Yeah, exactly. I would say, contact me on LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn. Or, I'm happy if you have episode notes, I'm happy to put my email out there so that people can contact me. And just always leads with the conversation. You never know where that can lead.
So it's Ryan McInturf.
Yes. I would tell you my actual email, but it's a monster. Like I give it to people when I'm at, let's say, a store and I want them to make a mistake so I don't get their spam, because my email is it's spelled, they do that like .gov.qc.ca. So I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
That way people are not.
No, trust me. I mean, mine is at Handbag Designer 101, and you should hear me giving that to people on the phone. I'm like a class, handbag.
Yeah.
Designer 10. Yeah, I get you. Also, you have a name like a soap opera star. So I think it's kind of like, I wouldn't forget that. Like, who did it? Ryan McInturf did it.
Yeah,
like, that's hot. I'm into that. Okay, Ryan, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being part of Handbag Designer 101, the podcast. You may or may not be bombarded by people wanting to do business in Canada, or at least to learn more, because I think this has been really eye-opening and truly educational, because there's so much information that for people who are wanting to get discovered or want to get more distribution or want to cast a wider net and might be stuck, that perhaps going through Canada to get to full North America seems to be a much smarter way. It's like, there are less players to get you into a wider audience. So why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah, I think it's just worth exploring. Like, you should always explore it. You should consider all your options.
100%.
It's easier to go there, less sweat and tears, and you should do that.
Oh, yeah, there's so many tears when you're running a brand. It's all tears, and that's what people can't see. Ryan, thank you so very much, and have a great day, and we will for sure be in touch with you soon.
Perfect. It was a pleasure. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to rate and review, and follow us on every single platform at Handbag Designer. Thanks so much. See you next time.